Gentlemen, welcome back to the Front Row Dads podcast. Today, my guest is Chad Willardson. And here's how I was a yes to this interview. I listened to a show that Chad was on, listening to him talk about his children and his views on money. And it didn't take me more than about 15 minutes to absolutely be a hell yes for this conversation today. Chad's helped people to create wealth and then to move beyond wealth. So there's this spectrum of helping people figure out what to do with their money, but most importantly, help his kids figure out what to do with their money, in my mind. And that's the conversation I'm interested in having today. Chad's got a lot of credentials, a big bio. We're going to skip past a lot of that and get right into the chat. Chad, welcome to the show, man. Glad you're here.
Thanks, Sean. Really excited to be here. This is awesome.
Dude, let's start with something that's fully in the moment right now. So in the last 24 hours, what's been real for you? What's life like for you right now in this moment in your world? Good or bad?
24 hours. All right. So last night, let's see. My son had, I have 5 kids. My oldest is almost 18. Youngest is 7. And last night, I took my kids to football practice, volleyball practice, basketball practice, and tennis lessons. And that was all before 7 o'clock. So I went straight from my business interviews and business meetings. Got an incredible referral to an entrepreneur out of state that just like a 5-minute call turned into a hour-and-a-half call to a new client. It was an awesome day. And then I got to be a dad, a sports dad, which is pretty much what I am. So
that's awesome, man. What was your life like when you were a kid? Were you a sports kid?
Definitely, yeah. My main sport's basketball, and then volleyball close second. I wanted to play football, but my uncle was basically, he played in the NFL for 12 years after playing at USC, and then permanently disabled with his busted legs from the NFL. And so my mom, younger sister of this NFL guy, was like, any sport but football. So
yeah, I've
snuck my son into the football world, and I'm having a lot of fun.
How about your volleyball experience? When did that begin, and how long did you play?
Volleyball. So up until 9th grade, basketball still number one. I was a pitcher in baseball until 9th grade, and then all my friends were playing volleyball, and we're a big beach family. Grew up in Orange County, California, so I swapped over to volleyball from baseball. And we ended up my senior year. This is not like an Uncle Rico Napoleon Dynamite story. We were number 1 in the country my senior year. We won the state championship in California. So it was
Is that right?
Fun. Yeah.
That's cool. I found volleyball about 3 years ago, man, and I can't get enough of it.
Oh, wow.
We play every weekend in Austin. Our dads come out, and we have wives now, and kids are now joining, and
that's cool.
It's fun, man. It's a lot of, just putting my feet in the sand, moving my body, laughing. There's a right amount of shit talking that goes on during the game. And
I admit I've played beach volleyball twice in the last 10 years. So I have not picked up a volleyball in a while. You guys would probably work me out there.
Dude, when you make it to Austin sometime, come play with us. That's my invite to you.
There you go.
When did your interest in money begin, Chad? Like, how do you remember as a kid, your first exposure to it? How did you stumble into this world of finance?
I was not one of those kids that was like obsessed with money. Like I said, I was really obsessed with sports. I was not an entrepreneurial kid. You know, I did chores and stuff, and I mowed lawns and things like that. But it really was in college. I was doing an internship for an investment company, and I was kind of the right-hand man of the CEO, portfolio manager, who was managing $10 billion. And I got to, basically, I was just like his shadow. If I needed to grab him a coffee, or if I needed to print stuff, or if I just sat in and took notes on his calls, I did whatever it took. And I got really fascinated about investing in the stock market, and how picking great companies before they grow was just really fascinating to me. So it really started in my internship during college.
Mm. And when do you think that you really hit your stride in the space? Like, was there a defining moment for you in your journey to being a business owner and entrepreneur?
Yeah, good question. I wasn't an entrepreneur out of college. I started at Merrill Lynch Wealth Management. So I worked there for 9 years. And I was probably going to work at Merrill Lynch my whole life. Like, I loved the culture. I love the big company. Like, we were the stuff out there on Wall Street. And then everything changed in the 2008 recession. The big banks were buying the brokerage firms and the investment companies, and like it completely turned our world upside down. It turned more of like a bank centric culture rather than an investment culture. And so though I had done really well and built an incredible business over there, I left and started from scratch, kind of like Jerry Maguire. Like I packed my stuff up, grabbed a couple assistants, and we left. And I started Pacific Capital in 2011. So I technically wasn't an entrepreneur until then. And we've definitely never looked back. We've hit our stride multiple times. So
And you've got 3 books out there: Stress-Free Money,
yeah,
Overcome These 7 Obstacles to Find Financial Freedom. And then came Smart Not Spoiled, the 7 money skills kids need. Kids must master before leaving the nest. And then Beyond the Money, 8 lifestyle shifts for entrepreneurs. I heard you say that you put out Stress-Free Money, but then when you put out the Smart Not Spoiled, you had so much interest in that
yep,
those sales actually started crushing right away. There were
it
so many
did.
people that wanted to know.
Yep.
Obviously, our guys have spent a lot of time talking about, they've spent a lot of time talking about money in the sense of how to earn it, how to
Right.
invest it. That's a conversation that they're well versed in. We spent a lot of energy on that. But the one that I know a lot of our guys want to talk about, and that, by the way, that's not to make a negative to earning or investing. We want to have that conversation,
For
and
sure.
we will. I mean, we should talk about that a little bit today too. But I'm particularly fascinated by the Smart Not Spoiled, and talk me through the origin of that book and how you decided that you wanted to write that you had enough material to write that. Where were the pain points? Where were the victories?
It's a great question. I'm trying to think of how I could make it concise. I would say, I've got 5 kids and I've always thought very differently. I've always been very contrarian. So if I take a stance, I'm going to stick with it no matter what, even if people think it's crazy. So I remember we had a babysitter. My wife and I went out on a date, and the babysitter was phenomenal. We came home from the date. My wife was taking the babysitter home, and we realized she put our 2 little kids to bed on time. She made dinner, cleaned up messes that weren't even hers, read to the kids, did all kinds of stuff, wrote a report about how the babysitting experience was. Like, here's the funny things your kids did during the night, all this stuff. Just phenomenal babysitter. And we paid her a great rate. The next weekend, we went on another date, came home, different babysitter. And my wife took her home as soon as we got home, and the house was a disaster. The kids were still awake. Dishes were messy. I said, "What did you guys do tonight?" They said, "We just watched a movie while the babysitter sat on her cell phone." And it was like the complete opposite of the previous week's babysitter. And so my wife gets home and I'm like, "This is wrong, man. We're paying the same rate and it's such a different effort and experience. We can't do this ever again." So I created a babysitter handbook, if you will, and like made a little menu and a guide to say, here's your base salary as a babysitter. And everything's commission based, basically. Like, if you do these certain things, you're going to get paid more. If you do these certain things, you're going to get paid less. If you get a ride to our house, you're going to get an extra $5. If you get a ride home, you get an extra $5. If you're going to read to them, if you're going to write a report. So I just made this really cool, unique thing. And every time a new babysitter came over, I said, here's how you get paid. You decide how much you want to get paid. I have no idea how much you're going to make, but at the end of the night, you're going to report back, and that's how much you make. From that day on, no one ever missed earning the maximum amount, which, by the way, was way above like the market rate.
Yeah.
So they were fully incentivized, and they did an incredible job from that time forward. And word kind of spread. And so people were like, "Hey, Chad, what's this babysitter guide you made? Like, what is this all about? Can you send me a copy?" And so I think after doing enough of those little things like that, that were just a little innovative of how I treated money and kids together, I just was always getting questioned, like, "What else do you do with your kids? I heard you don't pay an allowance. What do you do instead? Can you tell me about that?" And eventually I just said, I actually can't answer all these inquiries. I'm getting random inquiries on LinkedIn, like, "Hey, I heard about this or that." So I decided to write a book. And that's
cool,
kind of
man.
how Smart Not Spoiled came about.
That's really cool. Do you still have the babysitter guide?
I do.
Is that something that, do you share that openly? Like, is that something?
Absolutely, yeah. No, I don't care. It's all good.
If you send me a copy of that, we'll link to it and let people see what that's about. That's fascinating, man.
Totally.
Yeah, I love that. And
I got to tell a quick story about John. I had a potential client meeting of this group of business founders out of state, telemedicine business. I think it's worth like 250 million. It was this big, serious consultation, and 6 guys in the meeting. And as I'm leaving, we're going to catch the flight back home. The main founder, he's like, the only thing he cared about, he's like, hey, I heard on a podcast about that babysitter guide. Could you email me that by chance? And I was like, of all things, man, the one thing that this guy was like really wanting to meet me for was this silly little guide, but it's kind of funny.
Well, I mean, look, I get it, because look, the thing that brings men to their knees oftentimes, the thing that really kicks them in the nuts can be the family challenges. Like, how do I navigate this?
Totally.
So they might be king of their world in their businesses. They can delegate a lot of things. If somebody talks bad, they can let them go. There's a lot of power in that space, but at home, that's been the most challenging place for them emotionally.
No doubt.
So I fully understand. You have some unique ways of looking at working with your kids. I heard you talk about, when you get into Smart Not Spoiled, I think that you get into earning your way. Right? Yep. Talk about like paying for things on your own. Talk a little bit about your philosophy at home about your kids paying for their own stuff.
Yeah, from a very young age, our kids are expected to be self-reliant in many ways. I mean, obviously, they're not paying for their own food, and they got to do stuff that just part of being a kid in our house. You're going to make your bed, you're going to help with the dishes and all that stuff. But there's a lot of things that you're expected to pay for. So if you're going to a birthday party, or like soon they're going to have Christmas parties where they got to go to a white elephant party at school. I'm not buying gifts for all these parties at their school. So you, my kid, you're going to figure out how to earn some money, and you're going to spend your own money. You're going to buy your own gifts. They buy all their Christmas gifts for the family. It never made sense to me to say, hey, do you want to buy kids for your brother, or buy presents for your brothers or sisters, and I'm just going to pay for it? Like, it didn't feel right to me. So our kids pay for their own stuff. They're buying their Letterman's jackets, they pay for that. They're going to Disneyland, they pay for that. They're going to a birthday party, they pay for that. So they go on a date or going to a movies, like they're going to pay for that. So we give them opportunities to earn money that's way higher than probably just a straight allowance. Just the automatic dependent socialist check that just comes in the mail, right? We're actually teaching them to earn money and be creative. So 4 of my 5 kids have their own business, which is pretty cool. Even the 9-year-old, she has a little trash can business in the neighborhood. My 15-year-old does, he spray paints curbs, the addresses on curbs. My 12-year-old who loves animals, he's got a dog walking business. And then my 17-year-old, she's a Air Jordan sponsored basketball player. So she has a really high ticket training for kids who are 8 to 12 years old for basketball. So
wild, man.
Yeah, it's fun.
It's really great. I was so proud of my son. Ocean is 8. And the other day he wanted to go sell some of his toys. So we went down to a busy street here in Austin, South Congress, and he set up a little table. And he was learning that he wasn't in the right spot, didn't have the right traffic, moved his table, ended up selling some toys, made $23,
There you go.
I taught about like, creating a conversation and, having something that would be a lead magnet for somebody to want to come to the table. And like, it was just beautiful.
At 8, that's really impressive, man.
Isn't that
At
cool?
8 years old, that's really cool.
And then my son, Tiger, who's 13, is currently backpacking through the Himalayas right now.
Whoa.
With 10 other kids and 3 guides, and he had to earn the money to go on that trip.
That's
so he had to hustle, make the business, work. And he was emailing my friends and asking for jobs, and it was really cool to see it happen. So
how awesome is that?
I'm a big fan of earning your way. And I think that's a big piece of it. And I'm with you that there are certain things where I'll split the cost with him. I'll say, hey, if we do this, like I'll pay half, you pay half. There's certain things like that. But for the most part, I want him earning the way, which I think is great. Is there anything else? When you talk about 7 money skills, give us 1 or 2 more of the skills that you think are important.
One of the things that I talk about, I'll reference it right now as I'm looking it up. So earning is a big one. Like we've kind of talked about that. I really teach the kids and the parents to make sure kids understand that you can make money doing something you love.
Yeah.
And so I talk about the trifecta. Like you got to find something you're good at, you enjoy it, and people are willing to pay for it.
Yes.
You know, not 2 out of 3, but 3 out of 3. I mean, the simple principles I'm teaching them: taxes, giving generously, knowing your cash flow, invest early and often. I think teaching kids to invest is something I love to do. You know, my kids are into investing. Once I explain the compound effect of growth and long-term returns, like when my son was 14, he just lit up, and he was like, "Wait, if I invest $100 a month for that long, it's going to turn into a couple million." He's like, "What if I can invest 200?" And I'm like, "It's the numbers get bigger, buddy." You know, so letting them have investment accounts and make mistakes and learn things with small amounts at a younger age is way more beneficial than waiting till they're 30, 40, or 50 to become a new investor. So I think that's really important as well.
Did you start a product around that?
Well, yeah, we have a company that honestly, I believe, John, is going to be, but it has potential to be a $1 billion company. I'm a co-founder of a company called Gravy Stack. Scott Donnell is the lead founder. He's in Arizona. He's a tech entrepreneur. He had a business that basically was the largest kid fundraising business in America for schools. And we created a company called Gravy Stack that launches first quarter of 2023. So the motto is game, learn, earn. So Gravy Stack is going to let kids learn about money while having fun. They're going to have a debit card. They're going to get a lot of experience playing real life games, learning a lot of stuff about money along the way, creating a digital resume with certificates of evidence of mastery in these different areas that will help them in their future. And it's something I'm really excited about. There's a couple players in the space that are $3 to $6 billion valuations that currently just offer debit cards for kids, and they offer automated allowance, but there's not that engaging, fun education. So the kids they're getting debit cards, which is great, but I think we can go a lot further with this. So
zooming out for a minute on, parenting, not just focused on money, but talk to me for a second about, your principles for parenting, Chad. If there were 3 things that sort of guided you as a father, what might they be?
It's a great question. I think the principles of, we're a family of faith, so faith in God to us is extremely important. May not be for everyone, but to us, that keeps us grounded. Another principle really is being generous, where much is given, much is required. We go on, it's tough because you don't want your kids to be spoiled, but at the same time, like, I'm not going to live a poverty-stricken lifestyle just to make sure they don't, have any spoiled tendencies. So that's kind of where I wrote the book, Smart Not Spoiled, because how do you keep our kids are growing up in a different world. They have a lot more than I had and you had when you grew up and I grew up. So when we travel, especially internationally, we will always include a day of service. So my wife and I will find something, or the kids will find something. Like we were somewhere in the Caribbean, and we found an orphanage that we went to on the second day. Took a really long taxi ride, like an hour and a half, to get to this orphanage. The taxi driver's like, "What is this American family doing?" Thinking we're kind of weird. And the very last day of the vacation, we had an open day, no excursions. And my wife was like, "What do you guys want to do on the last day?" And they said, "We want to go back to the orphanage and say goodbye to our friends."
Whoa.
And it was like, really?
Whoa.
Like, it's beautiful outside. We can go on the boats, the kayaks, whatever you want to do. And they're like, no, no, no. We want to go back and say goodbye to our friends because we're not going to see them again. And that's when I was like, man, this is good. This is how we should be parenting, giving our kids experiences that teach them that the world is bigger than themselves. So we won't travel without incorporating some kind of giving in the travel. And I just have always found that to be important. That's something my parents taught me as well. Third principle is really, I would say, work hard, Everything is earned, not given. So I think fighting entitlement is tough these days, but it's something that we're committed to.
And where do you think you've struggled? I mean, by anybody listening in, they're like, Chad's killing it.
Yeah.
Guy's winning in every area of life. But I'm sure that you've taken a few punches to the gut. Where do you feel that you've dropped the ball or struggled or messed up?
I've struggled in many areas. I'll say this, it's not the common struggle, which is being not present. I'm super present. Like I don't check into the office that often. I'm present at everything with my kids. Where I've probably struggled and had issues and had to work through with my kids is pushing them too hard.
Mm,
Is being that just type A entrepreneur who's like, let's go, let's get things going, let's get things moving, and not giving enough space, understanding that each of my kids are different. Like my oldest kid is just like me. She's got her hands in 20 things. She's super capable. She's like I said, she has Division 1 basketball scholarship offers. She's getting her pilot's license in high school. So she goes early morning, she flies. She's sending me videos flying over Newport Beach and the ocean. She's got so much stuff going on. So when I push her, it's like two of the same type of people pushing each other, right? I apply that same approach to some of my other kids, and it's like, whoa, does dad not think I'm good enough? Is right? Why is dad trying to push me to do this or that? So I think where I've struggled is treating each of the kids as if they're similar when they're not. Does that make sense?
totally. Yeah.
So I think that's something I've been working on. I still have a long ways to go, but understanding that my kids are extremely different is something that I'm definitely learning.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was just talking to somebody earlier about you know, the what was the name of the chart? I'm sure you've seen this before. A lot of consultants use this, but it's the support challenge matrix, right? And
Mm,
like, it's really a great visual. If somebody just Googled, by the way, support challenge matrix, you'll see it. And I think this is like a perfect tool for dads to look at, where you have levels of support. You either have high support or low support, and high challenge or low challenge. So if you are high challenge and low support, you're just basically, hey, you figure it out with
hmm.
zero support. And then you could
Right.
be in a dominating phase if you're that way. But if you're high
Interesting.
support, high challenge, then you're in a liberation phase. You're in empowering, your kids. You can also get into high support with low challenge, which is a protector, or a low challenge, low support, which is abdication, right? So apathy and low expectation. But it just gets me thinking about the right level of support and challenge for
Mm,
kids. Like, how do you raise the bar, but at the same time, you're not crushing them. You're not like putting little league into major league,
right.
where they don't stand a chance. And you've got to find that middle way, that flow where you're appropriately challenged. That's the biggest thing for me is, am I appropriately challenging my kids?
That's a
You know,
great question. No,
so
in fact,
difficult.
I actually am not aware of that, and I'm going to go look it up as soon as we're done. That sounds awesome.
It's just so easy. It's just so
Yeah.
easy. And it's like, I can see. And the other interesting thing, Chad, that came up in this conversation earlier was how I'm different with different kids. And
Yes.
one of the guys I knew that has 5 kids, he's like, I'm more of a protector with that kid. I'm more of a dominator with this kid, and I see how it's different, for lots of reasons, because your relationship to that child changes. That stage of life you might not be as dialed into, or you're not connecting through the sport, that they don't play the sport you love, or whatever it might be. Their
Totally.
personalities are different.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. That sounds like awesome advice.
Let's talk a little bit about the 3 books and the stages of the book. So Stress-Free Money is about finding financial freedom. Then you wrote The Spoiled or Smart Not Spoiled, then Beyond the Money. And that's for guys who have found financial success. And that's more of, what do you do at that point in your life? Is that correct?
Correct. Well summed up.
Yeah. And so in the Beyond the Money, how would you sum up that book? Why would somebody want to read it?
Great question. Someone would want so reading this book is because you've already achieved great entrepreneurial success. You've already hit some huge financial goals. The subtitle is actually 8 lifestyle shifts for entrepreneurs with 8 figures or more. I find that if you've got 10 million or more, that you're not as worried about the day-to-day financial stuff that most people are. And so this book is for that group. So it's not as broad as the first two books, but I think what I've found is our clients are often, if you sell a business and you have a big liquidity event, you got a lump sum of money, it's in your DNA to be a creator, to be an entrepreneur. You're not done. You're not suddenly going to do nothing. You might try that and then you're going to get bored. So this book is like how to do the next phase a lot smarter, knowing what you've already learned to climb that first mountain. So it's really talking about that second mountain or that third mountain, climbing in a much smarter, more fulfilled way. I'll give you kind of a snippet of a couple of the chapter titles. Don't be successful in isolation. Give yourself permission to celebrate. That's important because a lot of us have big wins and we just immediately are like, all right, what's next? What am I going to achieve next? So that's important. Had a client sell their business and he's like, what do I do now? He had a couple other irons in the fire and he was already creating stuff. And I said, absolutely nothing. Take your wife out this weekend, get a babysitter, go celebrate. Just like celebrate the whole weekend. You've had a huge journey creating this massive, successful moment, and it would be a shame to just move on to the next thing. But that's what we often do. Recharge your relationships, prioritize and invest in your health, manage your attention, own, don't operate. So in that chapter, I talk about being able to own a lot of businesses, but not operate any of them. Keep protecting your freedom that you've earned through your success. That's really important to me. Don't stop, you aren't finished. And then the last chapter is never retire. So, my philosophy is retirement is for people who dread what they do. So you wouldn't retire from what you love. If you've got a lot of freedom, you have an incredible team around you that complements and takes off a lot of the stuff that you don't like to do, then you just keep creating. You just keep using your vision and your talents to build bigger and better things. And there's no reason to retire from that lifestyle.
I heard somebody once say it's not retirement, it's rewirement.
There you go.
You rewire yourself. Absolutely. I think that's a great way of looking at it. Yeah. Where do these guys hang? You got 8 figures, right? Yep. You're at 10 million beyond. You're figuring out what's next. You just exited a company, something to that effect. Where do these guys hang? Are they part of mastermind groups? Do they gather in certain places? How do they find one another?
I think they definitely gather in mastermind groups. They like the social affiliations. They're at least the ones that I'm connecting best with. They're learn-it-alls. They're not know-it-alls. They're very much in growth mode. That's what got them to where they are. So
what do you think the best groups are out there? What are your favorite masterminds? Who would you
hands down for entrepreneurs? There's nothing that compares to Strategic Coach. Just nothing.
Yeah,
absolutely nothing. Like I've been a part of so many different organizations like that, and I don't think anything possibly compares. There's a lot of sub programs within the program. Like I just went to that couples connection marriage retreat, transformational. I've been married 21 years. And it was a transformational weekend in Sedona where we really just learned a ton that is going to change our marriage. I'm really excited about it.
They've got others. Is that Dan?
Dan doesn't personally lead it. He has a couple other coaches that lead that, but it's under Dan's umbrella.
Yeah.
I'm part of the Lifetime Extender as well. That's under Dan's. Dan leads that one with Peter Diamandis and a couple other guys.
Yeah. We had Dan on our online summit last year, and guys loved Dan. It was so great.
He is like, his brilliance, like it's like, I don't even drink wine, but it's like wine. Like over time, it gets better. Like I realize every time I'm with him, I realize how brilliant the guy is.
Yeah. I had a great moment since, by the way, I'll tie a thread here. Since somebody that connected us was connected to Scribe, started by Tucker Max. Tucker's in our group. And
is he really?
Tucker was
a friend of mine. No way.
Oh yeah. Well, and Tucker's son and my son are really good buddies. So
oh man,
I see Tucker a good bit. But so listen to this. This is great. So Dan's leading the online summit, and Tucker's there, and he said something about Tucker, and Tucker goes, "I'm here, Dan," and Dan goes, "Oh," he goes, Tucker, I knew you were a dad. I didn't know you were a front row dad.
That is awesome.
Dude,
Oh,
it was
that's
like,
funny.
that might go down as like my favorite moment on any online summit ever, dude. That's
funny.
totally classic. So,
Uh,
and I can't tell you how many times we said it today. We were on a call. It was who, not how.
yeah,
I find
there you
myself
go.
bringing up a lot of his stuff.
Totally.
Yeah, man, what a brilliant guy. And I'm grateful that you mentioned that. We have guys in our group that are part of Strategic Coach. And yeah, that's wonderful.
That's awesome.
Chad, here's a question for you, man. What do you wish, you've done a few of these interviews now. You're talking about your new book. You've got these other books out there. What's something that you wish people would ask you in these interviews, but maybe they rarely do? What's a topic that you think you don't talk about enough because it's not brought up, but that you have energy around?
I think the kind of the comparison, the comparison factor of wealth and money. I think it's, especially amongst guys, it's not talked about enough. When I go to some conferences, especially like the high-end wealth conferences, honestly, most of the guys are so ego driven, and they're so worried about how they compare to everyone that like all their questions, I can just see right through them that they're trying to like measure each other up. You know what I mean? And I think it's unhealthy. And we don't talk about it enough because guys are the providers, we're the macho, we're going to go out and hunt and bring back our kill. And it's like, we don't really talk about it enough of our own insecurities and fears. Like guys don't really, they chat about it. They'd rather pretend to be super successful and wealthy to fit in than ask a dumb question, you know? And
Right.
I think that's kind of a bummer because we miss opportunities to share with each other when we put our ego first. So I don't feel like I ever get asked about that kind of stuff.
What's been your journey through that, man? When in your life have you been comparing, and then how did you navigate that and find your way out of it?
I don't want to answer this in a weird way, but I'm very competitive when I'm playing sports, but I'm not a jealous of other guys' success person at all. And I don't know if I was born like that or if I just developed the fact that there's always going to be guys doing better than me. So there's no point in like wasting energy on it. But I feel myself sometimes trying to almost appease other people's insecurities because I could feel them maybe, having jealousy or comparison stuff. And I'd rather make it like a comfortable environment especially in group conversations. So I've just learned that like, I can't resent success and become successful. I can't resent great wealth and find great wealth. So I'd rather celebrate and learn from people that are doing awesome than in any way, shape, or form be jealous or resent or talk trash about them, And on my LinkedIn, I'll have tons of financial people in my industry commenting below my comments. And I remember in the very beginning, I'm like, this is weird. Like, are they just always following me and commenting and stuff because they're trying to get attention on my post, or what are they trying to do? And then finally I just embraced it. I'm like, you know what? There's so much success to go around. Who cares? I'm gonna promote these people even though they're in my own industry, because it's all the good's gonna come back at some point.
Who do you, when you think of men who are father figures that are out there in the world, you have access to them, you see them, you watch what they're doing with their families, you see how they're living their lives. Like, who do you look to? Who is somebody that inspires you, that you respect, that you appreciate?
None of them are super well known. A lot of my personal friends that I've just developed relationships over time with, I really look up to. Many different industries, some of them very, very financially successful, some of them not so much, but I'm not really like a celebrity stalker. I don't really care about celebrity stuff, but most of them are just regular dudes who are just awesome dads and they put their family first. The only prominent one, I think, Benjamin Hardy, the author of Who Not How with Dan. He's a friend of mine. We talk probably twice a week. He's in Florida, but he's got 6 kids, 3 of them foster kids that he brought in his home. And he's just a stellar dad. So he and I talk a lot about family goals and things like that pretty regularly.
Yeah. When you look at all, and I say all these men, I don't know how many that would be. You got a handful of guys that you have great respect for. Do you see a pattern in there of what does success look like as a dad? If you had to define success in fatherhood, what might that be?
I think it starts with a great relationship with mom.
Mm.
I think each of them have great marriages. They're good examples to their kids of what that looks like. So there's like trust in the family. I'd say they're also just very engaged. I have no problem if a friend says like I have season tickets to all the sports in Southern California, and I'll call up a guy and say, hey, you want to go to the Laker game tomorrow night? I got great tickets, and he's like, oh man, my daughter's recitals tomorrow night, but let me see what I can do. And I'm like, no, you're not going to see
Right.
what you can do, man. I'm not going to be the reason you miss your daughter's recital. So I think it's those who really know how to prioritize, and they don't jump at every chance to basically ditch their family stuff.
Yeah.
Those are the people I respect. It's like, hey man, I've got stuff going on. I'll text people like, hey, I got a commitment, or I'm taking my kid to practice and he really wants me to watch him. So, and I think that kind of mutual respect is something that is earned over time, but it's something that I admire a lot in my friends.
Mm. That's cool, man. What's your tell me about a favorite family moment, man, that you showed up for in the last couple of years, highlight moment of just knowing that you were doing a great job as a dad. You were so glad you were there. Do you have any?
Yeah, this year in March, my daughter, my oldest, junior in high school, and they were kind of the underdogs in their high school basketball season, but she led them all the way to the Southern California championship game, and they're in our region and playing against this. She goes to a public school. We were playing against a big private school with their two star players were holdbacks. They're like almost 19 years old, and we're down by 12 points at middle of the third quarter, end of the third quarter, and she basically leads them back and scores a few buckets in the last minute. We win the championship by 2 points, and just the place goes nuts. And I was like, this, if I die tomorrow, this is the greatest fan experience. Like, I've been to Super Bowls and NBA finals. I'm like, nothing ever will compare to this moment.
That's cool.
So it was awesome. Yeah, the
That's cool.
pictures and videos, like often I'll just text her and say, remember this? And she's just like going nuts on the court with the trophy and stuff. So it was awesome.
Dude, Chad, you seem to me even keeled.
Yeah.
You have like this stoic personality, it feels. Do you get riled up, man? Can you get pissed off? Like, what triggers you?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm pretty even keeled. It takes a lot to get me one way or the other. So bad stuff might happen, good stuff might happen, and I'll get excited and fired up, but it's pretty hard to knock me off my game. I don't know. That's just kind of that's kind of how I've always been, though.
You think you're born that way, or do you think that was just the forging that happened, the leadership you had in your life?
I don't know. I really don't. I guess if I would ask my parents, yes, I was probably like that when I was younger, but it's just maybe always been that, just the vibe of like enjoying people and not overreacting to anything really. Like, I would say that's the truth. I don't overreact to anything. Like, I always think we're going to figure a way out of it if something challenging happens. And I've never found that losing my temper leads to a solution anyways. So I'm not going to waste energy on it. I'm going to stay.
Do you think that has to do with control? Like, I think about when I have lost nobody would describe me as you, by the way.
That's funny.
They would describe me as like highly emotional,
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I think that comes with some benefit, but it also comes with some challenges, which means that I do lose my shit.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
But I think that's because I want to control things so much, and not in a bad way. Not like I want to lock somebody in a room. So
right.
It's I want so badly for it to go well.
Right. I feel that, but I think it's more on the inside. Like, no one will ever know that. I just think back to like my high school basketball games, and there were moments of great intensity, once I did, I'm gonna confess in case my mom watches the show. I threw an uppercut to a guy my senior year and embarrassed my whole extended family and got suspended from a game. But the guy elbowed me right in the Adam's apple and was laughing, and it just triggered. So I uppercutted the guy and then got kicked out of the gym. But
Yeah.
other than that, like on all my games, I was pretty chill. You couldn't tell if it was up by 30, down by 30, tie game with 10 seconds to go. Like I'd have a smile on my face because I was basically trying to stay calm and be a leader that could manage the situation, basically.
Mm. Earlier you mentioned one of the greatest gifts, I think, to your kids is to have a great relationship with your partner, right? With your
Correct.
spouse.
Yep.
Talk to me about that for a quick minute. How do you look at marriage? Why does it work for you? How do you honor your wife, in front of your kids?
Yeah, disclaimer, it's not a perfect marriage like anyone. We're married 21 years this next month, actually. I think creating time to spend time together while you have kids. I think actually that's something that I do differently. We take a lot of time for our kids. We travel with our kids. We're at every game, but I will take my wife on little trips or vacations without the kids at least quarterly, if not more frequently. So the kids know, and I'll tell the kids, look, before there was you, there was me and mom. And we're going to spend time dating. We're going to spend time vacationing where it's just us. So we will prioritize spending time away, and the kids understand that. And I think in a way, they actually like seeing that, hey, mom and dad love each other. Mom and dad make time to go have fun together. It's not just all about being parents. We were in Sedona this last weekend. We went to Nantucket, in August, and we were in Kauai in October. And while we were in Kauai, I was recording a social media video of me and her. And I made this point. I was like, why do you think it's so important to travel without kids once you're married? And she straight up says on the live video, because 3 days ago, I wanted to strangle you and now I don't. and I was like, wow, that's pretty transparent for social media, but it's true. Like you forget a little bit of that romance and love and everything and why you're together when you're just in the daily routine of being parents and doing your business stuff. So for me, getting away and keeping everything like alive and connected is really important.
Yeah. Yeah. So true, man. Marriage, I always tell people, has been the hardest thing for me. Like building a business, no problem. Parenting, no problem. Marriage, well, you test me there. Like,
yeah, it's not easy.
Yeah. I heard somebody say also recently, you marry your unfinished business in many ways. Like this is somebody that brings out the things you need to work on.
It's true. That's very true.
And also the idea that if you don't address your childhood traumas, your relationship will. So
interesting.
All of those have been true for me, man. And my wife and I have gone through some of our biggest growth moments over the last couple of years, and we've been together 16 years. But just when I think I've got it all figured out, man, she evolves, I evolve, and then we've got new things to work on together.
That's fun. It's fun stuff. I think one thing I did learn in this weekend I talked about was we took the Colby assessment and the print assessment.
Oh yeah.
And the print assessment, diving deep for a few hours together and realizing like pretty much, here's what triggers me, here's what triggers you. And we just dove deep into that stuff. And it's like, well, what's another way we could go around that? Because we're opposite in some ways, we're opposites. So it's like, you can't just be yourself and use the golden rule and think it's going to work out. Cause that's when the friction happens,
100%.
So.
No, those personality tests I think they're super important. We had a lot of success with the Enneagram,
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And I mean, the reality is it's just saying we're going to give common language to these tendencies, these, right? These personalities, whatever assessment it is. It's just reminding us that we're all different. And one of the most interesting things for me about the Enneagram was like, you're this way if you're healthy, but you're this way if you're stressed.
Right.
So your personality shifts. And it was like, I'm a 7, so I'm like an extrovert. But when I get stressed, I go into a 1, which is a perfectionist, which is why I'll be fun until I feel like my house is not in order.
Right.
And then I'll turn into like Officer Vroman when I'm like,
oh, yeah.
I'm like, we're going to clean this shit up like in the next hour.
We have 1 hour and everyone better get your, act
That's
together
exactly right,
Yeah.
man. And but now she goes, oh, he just reverted to a 1 because he doesn't feel safe. His nervous system is dysregulated. So I just know I need to weather the storm for a minute and he'll get back to a 7.
Totally. That's awesome. Yeah, it's just awareness. That's all it is. It's just being a little bit aware and a little more thoughtful.
Hey, my last question to you, man, is I hope people, Chad, check out your work. I really appreciate your vibe. I need to hang out with guys like you to keep me like, just on
come out to the beach, man. And the ocean is where my serenity comes.
Yes.
No cell phone out there, just you and the ocean.
That's right, man. I'm definitely a water person. That's something I learned about myself. I feel so at peace around water. Grew up going to a lake in Wisconsin and just grew up in Virginia Beach also. So a lot of time near the waves and very much appreciate that. I do have a feeling this probably is not our last time connecting. I look forward to more. Here's my last question, man. As it relates to your line of work and what you're doing and whether or not guys choose to reach out and connect with you, what do you think you're just doing differently in this space than other people? What's your unique ability, right? That's a Dan Sullivan piece.
Yeah.
So lots of guys are talking money, right? But why do guys find their way into your world? What is it that's your attraction factor?
That's such a great question. You're not a rookie at this. You're good at this. I can tell.
Thanks, brother.
Yesterday, this guy introduced to me on a text, entrepreneur. That's all I knew about him was that he was an entrepreneur that was unhappy with his financial team. And I said, hey, call me whenever you want. I'm open to chat. And he called me. And like I said, it turned into an 1.5-hour discussion. 25 to 35 million net worth, high income, type A personality, just always working, right? The difference I bring to these entrepreneurs, well, number one, I work specifically with goal-focused, really high-income entrepreneurs. So that's a little unique. I work with the people like me who are doing a lot of things. I bring the mindset coaching to shift the way these entrepreneurs are thinking about their time, their attention, their lifestyle freedom. I go to the office very rarely. I basically have a couple podcast days a month and a couple interviews a month, and that's it. The lifestyle freedom and the financial freedom can really be enhanced at the same time. So most people are not a fit for me to work with. There's a little bit of a specific type of entrepreneur that I work with. And I'd say what I do differently is really apply a more lifestyle based, comprehensive, your mindset, your attention. How do you manage multiple businesses? How do you create freedom around your personal time? And that's something that he was talking about yesterday in the call. Much differently than a typical financial guy that's charts and graphs and numbers only, talking about how everything you should invest in is in stocks. Like for me, I've got lots of businesses, a huge real estate business and portfolio. I believe in not trying to steer people towards what benefits me. And so I'm going to say, absolutely, you should look at that private equity deal. Absolutely. That's a great business you should put some money into. Hey, I found a real estate deal I'm going in on in Tennessee. It's a bunch of medical buildings. I got some self-storage units I'm buying in Texas. Do you want to be a part of that? I'm not the guy who's going to say, yeah, you should put all your money in the stock market and put it all with me. And, here's the numbers I can get you and here's the returns. Like I look at things a lot more differently. And I add, I think, that family flavor to it, where I'm really more about building that connection, that trust, and that legacy within a family than I am just about the numbers.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And Chad, I got to ask just one more.
Sure.
I promise this is it.
No worries.
And I because it just came up for me. I'm like, gosh, should I really want to know this about Chad? Dude, showing up to the games, date nights with your wife, right?
Yep.
Traveling with the family, charity overseas, like all this stuff, 1.5-hour long conversation with your client, right? how do you get it all done and still have such a tan?
Oh,
Because,
that's funny.
no, I mean, look, I like, even like Dan Sullivan talking about buffer days and space
Yep.
in your calendar and all of that, but I still can't help but wonder what dominoes you're focused on tipping,
Yep.
how you look at your calendar. Because really, for most guys, it comes down to that. How
Yep.
do we manage our calendars?
I'll add, since it's election day, I'm an elected official as well.
Are you really?
I am.
Oh, that's
So-
right. That's right. I remember hearing that.
Yeah. So I get this question a lot because my LinkedIn looks like I'm doing 20 things, and I am, but I'm only contributing a sliver of my attention in my own unique ability.
Yeah, that's
And
right.
I think that's the only way to do it. I have
right.
teams doing everything that's not my best contribution.
That's right.
And
Yep.
so my attention, I have freedom to attend every single thing that my kids are doing. I have freedom to go on date nights and to travel. And when I travel, I go where the sun is. So that's why the tan is here. But I think that's it. I think I say no to a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
Well, thanks for saying yes to this, man.
Absolutely.
I feel grateful for the conversation. I had a feeling we would just meander down the road and talk about all sorts of things, and that's exactly how it unfolded. Guys, please go pick up a copy of one or all of the books that we mentioned. We'll link to them in the notes at frontrowdads.com. Stress-Free Money, Smart Not Spoiled, and Beyond the Money. Chad Willardson, if you want to follow Chad, where are you most active? LinkedIn or?
LinkedIn and Instagram. Yep.
Okay. So follow Chad. Again, we'll put all the links in frontrowdads.com. Guys, if you enjoyed the show, write a review, screenshot the review, send it to info@frontrowdads.com, include your mailing address, and I will mail you your choice of one of Chad's books. So I'll buy it for you. I'll send it to you.
Cool.
If you write a review on the show, let us know, mention Chad in your review. And that's it, guys. Also, one quick thing before we go, in case you haven't heard me talk about this, which I've been talking about it a lot lately. We've got our online summits happening every 8 weeks within Front Row Dads, and one of them is on wealth and legacy, and that's coming up in January and February. That's our pillar that we focus on in January and February, wealth and legacy. We've also got our Front Row Dad live event. So depending on when this show drops, that likely have just passed. But come next year and join us in Austin for our live event when you can get together in person and have the conversations that most fathers will never have. So we create quite a container for vulnerable, open, real conversations to share a lot of the strategies that Chad and I talked about today on the show. So guys, stay connected to Front Row Dads. Go get connected to Chad's work. And thanks for being here today.